I'm going to call the meeting to order. According to the agenda I have in front of me, we shouldn't be too long. Okay, let's stand for the Indigenous Land Acknowledgement, the national anthem, and then we'll be seated. Thank you.
We begin this meeting by acknowledging that Quinte West is on Indigenous land that has been inhabited by Indigenous peoples from the beginning. We thank all the generations of people who have taken care of this land for thousands of years. Long before today, there have been Indigenous peoples who have been the stewards of this place. In particular, we acknowledge the traditional territories of the Anishinaabe, Huron-Wendat, Haudenosaunee, and the Mohawks of the Bay of Quinte First Nation. This territory is covered by numerous treaties. We recognize and deeply appreciate their historic connection to this place. We also recognize the contribution of the Métis, Inuit, and other Indigenous peoples have made, both in shaping and strengthening this community in particular, and our province and country as a whole. This acknowledgement serves as recognition of the contributions and historical significance of Indigenous peoples across Turtle Island and demonstrates our collective commitment to meet the promises and address the challenges of the Truth and Reconciliation Commission within our community.
Seated. Thank you. Well, thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen, for being here today. And I have a short agenda, and I hope you do too. I'll start out by wishing the Huskies well for the efforts they put into this season. They didn't win, but they certainly played good hockey, played well. And I wish the Hawks all the best as they continue on their quest for a more, I guess you'd say, robust season with the championship. And I congratulate all the people who own and support and come and cherish what they do. Thank you very much. Any disclosures of pecuniary interest? Thank you very much. Declare that closed. Approval of the agenda. Councillor McHugh, seconded by Councillor Reid. Thank you very much. Any questions or comments? All in favor? Thank you. Okay, approval of the minutes. Councillor Allier moves, seconded by Councillor Freeman. Any comments or questions on the minutes? All in favor? That's what it says. I got it on mine. Oh, I'm sorry. Yeah, I should have read further. Yeah, right. Sorry. I guess there aren't any, Josh. Hey, you didn't do them. I'm just kidding. Thank you very much. My mistake. Okay, Josh, you're on. You're going to tell us how what options we have and how we're going to move forward with the 2026 election. Thank you.
That's correct, Mr. Mayor. Thank you. And I just want to say welcome, members of council, Mayor and members of the public who are watching online. As you said, I'm here today to talk to you about the 2026 municipal election, specifically the methods of voting. I'm joined here today by Virginia Latour, who is our Manager of Legislative Services, and our Deputy Clerk, Louise Smith, who's our Deputy Clerk and Accessibility Coordinator, and Peter Adam, who's our Manager of Information Technology. So, going to be taking you through a presentation. Today I'm going to speak a little bit about the legislative framework that governs municipal elections in Ontario. I'm going to talk a little bit about recent municipal election trends. I'm going to talk about our recent engagement efforts, community engagement efforts as they relate to elections. I'm going to go through the voting methods. I'm going to talk briefly about vote counting equipment, and then some of the next steps, what you can expect from me as we roll out the election next year. And then finally, key municipal election dates that council should be aware of. So to start, the Municipal Elections Act governs all municipal elections and by-elections in Ontario. And the Act is underpinned by a number of principles, specifically secrecy and confidentiality of the vote is paramount. Elections must be fair, unbiased, and accessible to all voters. Integrity of the process must be maintained throughout the election. There should be certainty of the results that they reflect the votes that are cast, and voters and candidates should be treated fairly and consistently throughout the election. The principles of the Act are established in case law, and they help guide me and the other clerks in making decisions during the administration of the election. Oops, went too far there, sorry about that. In accordance with the Act, the clerk is responsible for the legislative and administrative conduct of municipal elections and by-elections in Ontario, and the clerk may provide for any matter or procedure that is not otherwise provided for in the Act or other regulation, and in the clerk's opinion is necessary or desirable for conducting an election. So pursuant to the Act, there's a significant amount of decision-making power that's afforded to the clerk, which is again why we rely on the principles of the Act to guide our decision-making, so we aren't ever making any arbitrary decisions during an election. Everything that we do should be defendable. So the clerk must be and perceived to be impartial and independent from external and political influence. This is why council has less decision-making authority than in most other areas of municipal administration. And under the Act, council's authority extends to permitting languages other than English in the provision of election forms and authorizing the use of alternative voting methods and vote counting equipment, which is really why we're here today to discuss this. Okay, so some municipal election trends in Ontario. What do the facts tell us? Well, online voting is growing with each election cycle. So in 2018, we saw 42% of municipalities use some form of internet voting, and that was up to 58% in 2022. So that's a 16% increase between 2018 and 2022, and voter satisfaction with online voting is growing. However, support for a paper ballot remains strong, and it actually rose between 2018 and 2022 as well. So there's a lot of municipalities out there who are still using a paper ballot. In terms of voter turnout actually declined over 5% on average province-wide between the 2018 election and the 2022 election. So in similar-sized municipalities to Quinte West, which is approximately the 25,000 to 100,000 population range, voter turnout decreased 5.43%. And Quinte West, we actually, between 2018 and 2022, we declined 5.3%, so we're right on par, right on with the provincial average. And this is likely due to a number of factors, first being voter apathy. So we had three elections within 13 months. We had the federal election in September of 2021, and then a provincial election in June of 22, and then finally our last municipal election, which was in October of 22. So that was a lot of going to the polls for voters, and I think they kind of lost interest by the time it got down to the last municipal election. We had less candidates running for municipal office. We saw nearly 20% of all offices in the province, so that's 2,842 offices available in the province. 553 were acclaimed, which to me is a crazy statistic. And of course, that led to less competitive electoral races, and voters were less inclined to go to the polls, especially when the mayor seat went uncontested, which was the case with a lot of municipalities. And finally, I think we saw some lingering effects of COVID-19. There's a lot of people who were uncomfortable going out and voting in person. Oops, this thing's finicky. So the city undertook significant community engagement efforts between the 2022 election and 2025 to learn about the community's attitudes towards municipal elections. And I have to take a moment to recognize and thank our communications and community engagement division for all the incredible work that they've done and continue to do with respect to gauging public attitudes towards elections. Their work has, and again, continues to inform much of the work that we do, putting together the election, and the clerk's office will continue to work closely with them as we roll out the 2026 election. So thank you again to our communications team. And we did do a lot of work. We did the post-election survey in just after the election in 2022. We conducted council feedback interviews in the summer of 23, and we just wrapped up our pre-election engagement in the spring of 25. The 2022 post-election survey focused on voter satisfaction with the 2022 election, and the bulk of the discussion did revolve around the method of voting for the last election. The council feedback interviews, where council members shared their thoughts and the thoughts of your constituents with me in one-on-one structured interviews, again, focused on some of the broader issues and challenges and opportunities coming out of the last election, but a lot of that discussion did revolve around the method of voting. And I think these were some valuable tools that we as the clerk's department are taking back to help inform a much smoother election in 26. But again, the focus for the purpose of the presentation for today is our pre-election engagement, because it's focused solely on the method of voting for the upcoming election. So between March 3rd and March 21st, we collected feedback using 6 channels: Facebook survey, website survey, telephone survey. We had an in-person survey here at City Hall and at Frankfurt Municipal Office. We solicited emails to the clerk's office, and I was in person at the Quinte West Family Fest in Ottawa on March 9th to talk to folks about method of voting. Not that there was a lot of interest in people talking to me about voting at that point in time, but we did engage a few people. And we asked, how do you want to vote in the 2026 municipal election? And the results were pretty staggering, or pretty clear, I should say. We had 846 people say paper, 706 say online, 82 say mail, 47 say telephone. That's over 1,700 respondents, so I thought that was pretty telling. So I know I spoke a little bit about on the last slide, but the voting methods that are traditionally available to councils in Ontario are in-person paper ballot, internet voting, vote by mail, and telephone voting. And I'm just going to take you briefly through them in terms of what they involve. So an in-person paper ballot involves voters attending a physical voting location to mark a paper ballot. The clerk decides the number and location of voting places. The clerk decides the availability of the advance vote. And during this election, if council wanted to go this way, we would look at a vote anywhere model to maximize convenience. And I'm going to speak briefly about it. I did mention it in my report, but essentially this model would allow voters to vote at any voting place within the city, regardless of where they live. I mean, they would be given the appropriate ballot, which corresponds to their home address, but they would be able to vote at a voting location that would be convenient for them. So that would maximize the convenience of the vote anywhere model, or sorry, of the paper ballot option. So some pros to in-person paper ballot: it's traditional, familiar, straightforward. Our voters are used to it in the city here. It makes for quick results at the close of voting if we use tabulators. It's a supervised voting method in the sense that election workers are present when individuals are marking their ballot, so it reduces risks of cyber threats, voter fraud, and other risks that I'll talk about shortly. The cons: well, potential lineups, waiting to vote. It's less convenient and less accessible relative to remote voting options. It's more expensive, there's less value for money, and we see a lot of ballot waste when we do in-person paper ballot voting. Internet voting involves registering online beforehand to receive a voter information package with a unique voting credential. Voters would use that unique voting credential to access our online voting platform and access their ballot to be able to vote. They can vote from any device that's connected to the internet, and they would be able to vote anytime during the advance vote and up to including on election day. The pros of this method: It's more convenient and more accessible relative to in-person voting. It's more efficient. There's more improved voter satisfaction associated with internet voting. There's opportunities for cost savings and value for money. There's less opportunity for human error when we tabulate the results. And in a post-COVID-19 world, it's contactless, if that matters to you. The cons, of course, are the cybersecurity risks, the increased opportunity for voter coercion, opportunity for voter marginalization. And when I say that, I mean voters feeling like they don't have the same access to vote because they don't have reliable access to the internet, or because they don't feel like online voting is a legitimate voting option. And of course, there's a reliance on people like Pete, technical support staff, to make sure things run smoothly. Vote by mail involves a voting kit, which includes instructions, declaration form, ballot secrecy folder, prepaid postage, return envelope that are mailed to every eligible voter in the city, and then completed ballots are returned by mail or by hand to secure drop-off locations. The pros is that it's more convenient and accessible, again, relative to in-person voting. And the cons is that it's expensive for the ballots and the return postage. There's increased opportunity for voter error and rejected ballots if voters don't follow the instructions and they mail it back without following the instructions. There's increased opportunity for voter coercion relative to supervised voting. Again, there's a lot of ballot waste because a ballot is mailed to every eligible voter in the city. Not everyone votes. And there's always risk of a mail strike, and we saw it with the last two elections. In the 2022 municipal election where I worked previously, we did vote by mail, and we just very narrowly missed a Canada Post strike, which would have been a nightmare. So for that reason, I would not go forward with vote by mail. And the last option is telephone voting. So that involves registering for voting beforehand. You receive a voter information package with a unique voting credential. You can vote at home or using your home or mobile phone with an audio ballot and automatic controls. And again, you can vote anytime up to and including on voting day, just like you'd be able to do with internet voting. The pros is, again, that the convenience and accessibility piece. You don't have to go anywhere. You can do it from your home, and it's contactless. But there's a lot of cons associated with telephone voting. Firstly, the difficulty navigating an audio ballot for voters, especially when there's a lot of candidates on the ballot, to have to sift through all of them, wait until all of them are said. On our end, as clerks, it's very difficult to program an audio ballot. Getting the phonetic pronunciation of all the candidates' names correctly is a lot harder than you might think. There's a lack of auditability of results. There's an opportunity for voter coercion, again, relative to supervised voting. It's inefficient for the overall cost. I mean, in municipalities that employ telephone voting, only about 5% actually vote using the telephone. So to pay for it as a voting method for those who actually use it, and then the additional technical support that's needed to make sure things run smoothly, I find that it's not worth it. And telephone voting is associated with decreased voter satisfaction. I'm going to speak a little bit about risks. All voting methods, of course, paper, whether you're using paper, internet, vote by mail, or telephone, have inherent risks. And the key is for election administrators to identify, understand, and manage these risks. And I'm going to talk to you in depth about some of these risks and how we manage them, because I think it's important for council and really the public to be aware of these risks and have some level of confidence in us as staff to manage these risks when we're conducting an election. Okay, so the first group of risks I'll talk to you about are relative or applicable to unsupervised alternative voting. So again, unsupervised voting is a method where the marking of ballots is not undertaken in the presence of an election official, such as internet, vote by mail, telephone. So there is less opportunity for us to verify that the person marking the ballot is entitled to vote, or isn't voting more than once, or isn't coercing another person into voting a certain way, which could happen, if you're voting at home by internet, you have a family member standing over your shoulder or something like that. That can happen with unsupervised voting. But there are ways to mitigate it. And again, all those things that I just mentioned are actually very serious crimes. There's very serious penalties associated with some of those things, and I've seen the OPP actually investigate and successfully charge people with things like voter fraud before, but I think it's important that we take steps beyond just, talking about the punitive reactionary measures and do something to prevent it in the first place. So again, we would use extensive education and outreach to teach people about some of these risks. We use voter information centers as much as possible. The other risk, accuracy of the voters list, which has been a big concern in recent elections. I'm hoping that it's going to be much better moving forward now that the province has assumed control of the municipal voters list. But in the past, we've run into things like ineligible voters receiving credentials to vote. Eligible voters may not be included on the voters list. When you come to a voting location, we can verify your identity and your eligibility and issue you the correct ballot, whether you're on the voters list or not. But when it's unsupervised, we can only work with the information that we're provided by whoever's has the voters list. And this is why we take the extra steps to get voters out to pre-register. That's the first risk mitigation on most of them is again, requiring pre-registration, doing things like two-step verification processes to make sure that the person who's casting the ballot is the person who's supposed to be casting the ballot. And again, as clerks, we take great care in reviewing and cleansing the voter data when we finally do receive them from whether it's MPAC or the province. We go through it very carefully. Another risk is, and I think I spoke about this already, is voter authentication. Again, we require two-step verification process to ensure that the person casting the ballot is eligible, and we require pre-registration to mitigate a lot of these risks. The last risk, of course, is court challenge to the validity of the results. We can see this if there's widespread voter fraud alleged within a municipality. We could run into this. Again, all we can do to that is implement and apply lessons learned from other court challenges. We have strong and defensible policies, and we do things like requiring pre-registration beforehand. So I'm going to talk a little bit about risks solely applicable to internet voting. And of course, cyber attacks, hacking, data being compromised, fraud, all of those things are real threats. They can happen, but there's a lot we can and that we do to make sure that they don't. We have vendor IT security controls, again, including dual authentication processes when entering the city's election portal, things like password management, updating firewalls and security for personally identifiable data when voting. We would pre-test the system, the election portal, so we would actually get a third party in to come and try to hack it, just to make sure that everything is where it should be. We would be educating staff and training throughout the rollout of the process, and we would be communicating the penalties associated with election fraud to our electorate so that they understand the seriousness of trying to commit fraud. Another risk is that the third-party audit that I spoke about when we do the testing could reveal that there's a high-risk issue that can't be fixed prior to voting day. So again, we would have contingency communication strategies for internet voting. That's why I'm recommending we implement internet voting in conjunction with paper ballots so that we always have a backup plan. And then, if we did go down this road, we would plan that security testing to precede the issue of voter notification cards. So if anything did happen and we couldn't use our online platform, then at least we haven't mailed out all the cards to the voters telling them that they can vote online. There is always the possibility that internet voting the platform might not be available for whatever reason. The URL isn't working. The application could be down. There could be a lot of network congestion, a lot of people trying to vote at the same time. One of the suggestions is that you only offer internet voting during advanced and not on voting day, so we don't have many people trying to use it at the same time. We would establish a communications plan for service interruptions, make sure that we understand what the vendor is planning to do if something like this happens, so we can move through that swiftly. And again, system notifications from vendors to voters like that so that everyone knows what's happening. I think this is the last one, no. Public perception of security concerns, of course. I think this is what we're doing now. We acknowledge that we have risks. We don't pretend that they aren't there. We're communicating proactively with the electorate about the potential risks. There's always a small number of voters who know or think or know that there are vulnerabilities in the system. So again, what we can do is establish a very strong communication strategy about the things that we're doing to mitigate these risks. The last risk for internet voting is the lack of access to the internet for voters. We look at broadband data and resident experience to understand where our internet connectivity is not good in the city. And again, as I mentioned, we offer internet voting as a complement to a paper ballot. So risks associated with telephone voting, again, network congestion, a lot of people trying to use it at the same time. We would stress test the system. We would offer it as a complement to paper ballot. The call quality can be compromised, clear pronunciation of candidate names. Again, as I mentioned, that can be an issue for us to get that right. We would employ a third party to make sure that we're getting the pronunciation correctly. There's a lot of companies out there that do that. And again, we would offer it as a complement to paper ballot. Vote counting equipment. So the other part of my ask to council today is the authorization of vote counting equipment. So staff is recommending the use of optical scan tabulators to count paper ballots. Tabulators count ballots quickly and correctly. They can be tested regularly and can be easily audited at any point during the election by staff, candidates. Scrutineers can watch the auditing of tabulators. They vastly reduce the risk of error in the counting of ballots and the tabulation of results. And quite frankly, the alternative is that I sit there and I count every ballot by hand, which I don't know if anyone wants. So that would increase the wait time for results. I mean, we'd be here into the wee hours of the morning if we had a good voter turnout, and it would increase the chances of the election results being challenged because you'd have a scrutineer, or many of them, watching me very closely to see what I'm doing. All right, next steps. Next step. So today I'm here seeking direction from council on the method of voting. The next council meeting next week, I'll be bringing back a bylaw if council so chooses to authorize any alternative voting methods and vote counting equipment. And then in Q3 2025, I mean, between now and then, the clerk's team will be working to establish the 2026 election model. So we'll be looking at voting locations. I think at this point it's premature to speculate or talk about where we're going to have voting locations, the dates of all that stuff. We're going to look at that, and I'm committed to bringing an information report back to council, hopefully at the end of summer, early fall, so that we can have that conversation and make sure that everyone's satisfied with where we're going to have voting locations. And of course, we're going to be working to establish a comprehensive elections communication strategy and plan so that we know as soon as the election kicks off, we can get information out to candidates and we can get information out to voters. Lastly, just some key dates. Nomination period, May 1st of next year. Nomination day, excuse me, which is the last day that a candidate can file their nomination papers to run for office, is August 21st. The advance vote would start September 26th. And of course, the most important one, voting day, October 27th. For anyone who's counting, that's 566 days away, 81 weeks. I don't know if that's too far away or too close, one or the other, I'm sure. And then the term of office would begin, the current term of office would end Saturday, November 14th. And then the new one would begin on the next day, on the 15th. Campaign period, which is essentially the last day that you guys can spend money on your campaigns, would be the end of next year on December 31st. And then your financial statements would be due to us on March 30th, 2027. So I know that was a lot. That's all I have for you. And at this point, I'll take any questions, or if you want to hold the questions and allow for any public input, and then we can discuss the report and we can take questions then. I'll leave that up to you, Mr. Mayor.
Any pertinent questions right now, we'll deal with them or give them to Josh, Councillor McPhail.
Just one question. You talked about the tabulators. Are you looking for us to okay that along with the voting method right now?
So I guess the default for elections would just be a paper ballot. If council did nothing, then the election would be conducted with a paper ballot with no voting tabulators and nothing beyond that. So what I would need from council is to authorize anything beyond a paper ballot, and I would need you guys to authorize using tabulators to count paper ballots.
Okay. Councillor Armstrong and Councillor Quinte.
So you're looking for a motion to go beyond the paper ballot?
Yeah, if the mayor at this point is taking motions, I don't know if they're wanted to provide for public input, if there was any.
We'll come back to motion. Councillor Quinte.
Thanks. I just wanted to get, you mentioned about waste of paper ballots. What's an example of waste of a paper ballot?
2 X's. Go ahead.
You mentioned that there's
Yeah,
could
so-
be a lot of waste.
yeah,
I think,
so-
like,
so
what
what
could you
happens when-
possibly do?
So, yeah, so, I mean, when we plan for an election, we plan for having every eligible voter. I think in the city right now, there's about 40,000 approximately eligible voters, so we would have 40,000 ballots just in case, because we're not really in a position to photocopy ballots for when we audit them. We need original ballots from the supplier, so we assume that everyone votes. We know that not everyone does. Again, we have a number of different ballot faces because we have different school boards, different wards, sorry. So there are a lot of different ballot faces we need. We have to estimate how many based on the voters list that we get. And again, the voters list historically has never been accurate at all. So it's very hard for us to estimate how many ballot faces we need for each ward, for each school board. So we do our best, but it does result in a lot of waste.
All right, that clears it up. Thanks.
Okay. Councillor Card.
Thank you, Your Worship. I just had a question related to the internet voting. The question is basically, where does the vendor's responsibility start and end in terms of after you've procured a vendor? I think about examples of like technical difficulties with the app or website. Can you talk a little bit about what is the vendor's responsibility versus what has to be dealt with by internal IT departments and how that interaction works?
Yeah, that's a great question. I mean, we would try to put most of as much responsibility as we can on the vendor when we do the RFP. Most of the vendors in the game right now are, they've been in it a long time. They have a lot of experience conducting elections and online elections, and naturally they just kind of assume most of that responsibility. I guess I would have to look into, if you had specific parameters that you wanted us to look into, we could certainly look at that and get back to you.
Okay. Thank you.
Go ahead. You got another question, Zach? Or no? Councillor Katsoulis? You good? Okay. Councillor Stedall?
Thank you, Your Worship. I have a few questions, actually. So, first of all, I really like the idea of the paper ballot, because I think we do have a lot of citizens that have the lack of internet voting, lack of the ability to, not a lot of them, but there are a few that I know we got input back that they couldn't vote online, so I like that idea. But for the tabulators then, would they be rented? Are they leased, or we wouldn't own them and have to save them for the next election? Is that
Yeah, through you to Councillor Settle. Yeah, we don't have any tabulators here. We have the opportunity, or hopefully have the opportunity, to rent some from the province if we needed them. Conversely, a lot of the vendors, depending on which vendor we went with, they may or may not lease them to us as well, but we would give them back afterwards.
Okay. And I know in the last election with the internet voting, there was one of the vendors did have a hiccup, and so I think the system went down right before the votes came in, and so everything was delayed. Would you build that into like a contingency plan, so if we couldn't close the polls, say at 8 o'clock, that there would be an extension, and the voters would know that would happen in advance, that there could be an extension?
Yes, through to you. Absolutely. That would be part of the clerk's procedure. So actually, I believe the Municipal Elections Act allows for the clerk to extend the close of voting should something exactly like that happen. So we would certainly build that in. We would have a communications plan already ready to go if something like that were to happen. So we would be able to push it out basically at all ends to our electorate should something like that happen.
Okay, thank you. And the final question I have is, so if there are polling locations, will there be scrutineers at those locations?
Through to you, yes, we have to allow scrutineers. So I think whether candidates act as scrutineers or you have someone act on your behalf, we are required to allow you to come in and observe voting, vote counting, all of those things in certain parts of the voting place. So yeah, we would certainly have to allow for that.
Okay, thank you.
Just to carry on before we leave that discussion, I think from the last election, you learned that at every poll, you need somebody there to keep and make sure if equipment does, hiccup, you got somebody right there to fix it. Mm-hmm. That's what we need to do. Otherwise, it's a long process, and we don't want that to happen either.
Absolutely.
Thank you. I think that's what Councillor McHugh.
Yeah, I hear some concerns about the internet problems right up to closing day or before. Could we possibly have the internet voting only up until, say, 2 weeks before the actual last day? And then after that point, everybody has to go to whatever the alternative method is we choose. So, say it should be paper ballots. That way there can be no last-minute glitches as far as internet goes the last day. If the period is 2 months long to vote, you get 6 weeks internet and/or paper, and then at the end of 6 weeks, internet's done. One option's on the table is left for those that still haven't voted. Just asking, is that possible? Or?
Yeah, that's certainly an option. I mean, we've never had in Quinte West. I don't think we've ever had a glitch in the past with internet voting, but we certainly could. I think, as I mentioned, the earliest possible date you could vote is the 26th of September. So approximately a month is the voting period. So we could certainly look at offering in the first part of the voting period and then cutting it off and then switching over to another method. We can certainly look at that. Yep.
Councillor Reid, you're next,
Thank you
please.
very much, Josh, for your excellent report. Lots of detail. I just have a couple of questions. I know that polling stations are very, very important, as are paper ballots, to a lot of the constituents. So I'm just wondering if when you're taking a look at where the polling stations would be, that there would be some accessibility for every ward to have polling stations so it's convenient for them, and perhaps call them polling stations, old-fashioned as it seems, rather than a help center. It's just, I think, part and parcel of the understanding of the voting. So that's my two questions about, can we call them polling stations, and can we make sure we have them in each ward, north and south part, especially in Sydney and Murray, they're large areas.
Yep. Thank you for the question, Councillor Reid, or the questions. To the first part, yes. So we would be certainly aiming to have at least one polling location in every ward. That is certainly something that we've talked about and that we're aiming for. With respect to your second question,
Help centers versus
help center.
polling.
Sorry, thank you.
That's okay.
Yes, we wouldn't be calling them help centers, and they would be polling station. If we were allowed a paper ballot to be offered paper ballot at those places, we would be calling them polling places and not help centers.
Thank you. I think that's very important clarification for everyone.
Councillor Sharp?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I too want to thank the director and the team for this excellent report and all of the detail. And I'm very pleased to see the paper ballot option, which I know many people were disappointed from the last election. So I think it's great, and I will be supporting the motion for online and paper. I just wanted to add to what Councillor Reid said. I feel that they're polling stations, and I know we said help centers last time, but I really think that's important, and that we do pick in-person locations in all the wards, so it is convenient for all the wards. My question is, when they are decided, and I understand you'll be preparing a subsequent report for the polling stations, and bringing that back and your recommendation. But my question is, can you put signs up in advance of the election indicating this will be a polling station? So people know that there will be polling station, whether it's the Murray Hall or Tucker's Corners. And so not just during the election, but in advance of, with a big sign. And the reason I say this, many people had voted at Tucker's Corners and other locations in Sydney Ward that did not happen. And they showed up there, and so then they just went home because they were not going to go online then. They were upset. So it would be really helpful if we could to have signs in the polling stations in advance saying this will be a polling station location. Is it possible?
Yeah, thank you for the question, Councillor Sharp. That's a great idea. We'll certainly do our best, keeping in mind that not all the locations we always pick are municipal facilities. So if we do have a facility that we use that is not municipally owned, we might not have the opportunity to put up a sign in front of the location if they don't let us. But I mean, we'll certainly take that back and try our best to work that into our communications plan. Thank you.
Councillor
Thank you,
Freeman.
and thank you for the report.
Thank you. Councillor Freeman, any questions or comments at this
No
time?
questions. Well, that's a really great report, and thank you for bringing it so much ahead of time. And I'm very encouraged to see we're going with the two methods.
Thank you. Councillor Card.
Thank you. Thank you, Your Worship. Similar to Councillor Sharp, I do support the paper ballot and the online voting options. I would worry that just with the state of municipal voter participation, kind of sub 30%, around 30%, I would worry about if we were to split up the dates where there was only one option for, voting day, or that there are different options on different dates. I think would be a big communication hurdle and could lead to a fair amount of confusion. So I would be a little bit worried about that, and would prefer both just for the whole election, but just want to make that point.
Anyone, Councillor Stedall?
Thank you, Worship. Just one question about financing. So it does indicate in your report is that this is going to cost us more than what we have in the reserve, and so it's going to have to be increased in the next budget. I would imagine the next couple of budgets in order to get to the level of where we need to be for the cost for this. I'm also wondering, though, and I understand that's the clerk's decision, and that just sort of shows up in the budget, and we just approve it. But if there's any consideration potentially for building this reserve to add for potential by-elections, because I know that was a consideration that happened in the past, that we just didn't have enough funds for it. So, and those are costly. So I just wondered if that is something that could be considered by staff.
Yep, we can certainly take that into consideration. Again, the cost of elections, it depends on so many things. Depends on, the method of voting, what kind of vendor we get, what kind of deals we get with the vendors. So we'll certainly take that into consideration. And as for, future by-elections, we'll see if we can start adding that to the reserve. I don't know if historically, if whatever we didn't spend, we left in there in case there was a by-election, if that's how that worked. Yeah. Treasurer's shaking his head. Yes, so. Thank you.
Okay, anyone else? Otherwise, thank you very much. Oh, sorry.
Michael.
Go ahead.
Thank you,
Who's
Mr.
next?
Mayor. Josh, you mentioned that you have to have 100% of the paper ballots. That's law? My question is, because there's only typically 30% voter turnout, even 40 or 50 would be a leap. So
Yeah.
could you potentially only order 70% or 80% of paper ballots?
We could. I mean, actually, it's funny, Virginia and I were just having this conversation earlier today that, it's always been best practice, I think, when you learn how to administer elections from, when you start out and the clerk is teaching you how to, and it's always just something that's drilled into your head is you have to have enough ballots for every eligible elector. So that's just something that we've always done. But, I mean, of course, to your point, keeping in mind that voter turnout is historically below 50%, somewhere below 50%, we can certainly look at that. But again, the alternative is that it would be the one election where we didn't order enough, right? Just assuming 50%, and we had more than 50%, and then we're stuck scrambling, either trying to photocopy ballots, which is never a good position to be in. So we always err on the side of caution, but I suppose we could certainly look at, not being overly cautious.
Sure, yeah, that 80% saves money, to Councillor Steddall's point, and at the same time,
Yeah.
I don't think we're going to be in trouble with that number.
Councillor Card.
Thank you, Your Worship. I know that you won't have a good handle on the cost for this election, I guess, until the RFPs come in, the proposals come in, but is there any savings from the transition of the voter rolls from MPAC to the province? Were we paying anything for those before that we'll get for free? Are there any savings or any change there?
No, through you to Councillor Card. MPAC has historically, MPAC has historically provided that information to us for free. We do pay a fee, and I think it's approximately $10,000 a year to pay a company that manages that list for us. It allows us to go in and manipulate the data. It has functions where we can look at duplicate addresses and, for example, people who have moved between elections and they live at different addresses, or people who get married, they change their last name and they appear on there twice. So we have functions in there where we can identify them and remove them and follow up with them and make sure that, this is your current address, so that we're not mailing them to voter cards and stuff like that. So we pay for that service, but to the extent that we pay for them, MPAC or the province, to give us the data, we don't.
Thank you.
Okay. Anyone else? Well, thank you very much, Josh. I just want to make one comment. You did a survey just recently about, what method, and my wife got a phone call, and I'm sure she's not any different than any other person who picks up the phone. But she picked up the phone, and she immediately, it wasn't long, and she hung it up.
Mm-hmm.
And I said, well, what was the call? And she said, well, somebody called and asked me how I'm going to vote.
I don't know if that
I'm
was
sure
if that was us. That would have been the provincial or federal election asking. But
anyways, I told her that. Anyways, I didn't.
Scammers.
I'm sure she's the only one that got that call. But anyways, that's she responded very quickly, and yeah. Otherwise, thank you very much, Josh. Thank you. We're good. Okay, I'm now at public input. Anyone here for public input? Got one individual here, and he's not here for public input, right? He's just listening, trying to get out of milking cows or something, right? Okay, all right. All right, resolution then, I need a mover and a seconder for the resolution. Councillor McHugh and Councillor Armstrong. Okay, that staff report Quinte West 2025-00049 by Josh Maskinski, Director of Corporate Services, City Clerk, regarding methods of voting 2026 municipal election be received, and that the council authorize and approve the use of paper ballots and tabulators and online voting for the 26th Quinte West Municipal and School Board election, and that pursuant to Section 42 of the Municipal Elections Act 1996, the clerk be directed to bring forward a bylaw authorizing the use of alternative voting methods and vote counting equipment in accordance with the council's directions at the April 16, 2026 regular council meeting. Okay, I got a mover and a seconder.
I just have one question.
Okay.
It goes
go
back
ahead.
to the financing. So just doing some quick math, it might be that we need an additional $38,000 into the budget for the election. So we should, instead of having 70,000 being added in this year and next year, we should top that up to make sure we have enough money. So we should probably be putting in $90,000 this year and next year for the election to make sure we have enough funds for the 2026 election.
I'm sure they'll come back to us with a lower figure.
Through you to Councillor Quinte, and I'll let Virginia correct me if I'm wrong, but I don't anticipate us going over what has already been budgeted for this election. if council were to authorize paper and internet.
All right, you're the boss.
Anything else? Any other? All in favor? Carried. Thank you very much. Okay, I have none. I like that. And bylaws, that confirmation bylaw 25036 for the April 9th special council meeting now be read a first, second, and third time and be signed and sealed. Need a mover, seconder, Councillor McHugh, Councillor Stedall, and all in favor? Carried. Thank you. And now I come to that glorious moment where we want 2 for confirmation and 2 for adjournment. So you got lots of hands, Mr. Clerk. Thank you very much. We're completely done today. Thank you.